Ah, that's how the zone works. Some people have to suffer, so other people can stop suffering.
I don't think I have ever said I am done with this game more than I did while playing Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl. Like, genuinely, there were so many points where I just sat there, controller down, staring at the screen like, this doesn't work, or like, this is just bad, or like, what am I actually, what did it want me to do? What was I supposed to do there? And then, 10 seconds later, I'm loading back in. Same problem, same area, same enemy, same mistake, probably. But something about it just gets under your skin. It's not even that it's consistently fun. Half the time, it fucking isn't. Half the time, it feels like the game is actively trying to end you. Like it's deliberately putting you in situations where you're underprepared, slightly confused, and about 2 seconds away from something going wrong. And most of the time, it does go wrong. But instead of bouncing off it, for whatever reason, I just kept coming back. Over and over and over again. Like, I had something to prove. I wanted to prove something to this game, to myself. Which is weird, because the game doesn't really care, it doesn't particularly care if you prove yourself to it. It doesn't reward you for sticking with it in a clean, satisfying way. It just keeps throwing shit at you. It just keeps throwing you back into the same hostile mess, and it just see if you can deal with it this time, is essentially what the game is trying to do. Eventually, without really noticing, I started to deal with it. Not perfectly, mind you, not consistently. I was still dying constantly, still getting caught out, still making stupid mistakes. Just slightly less of them. That's the hook of this game. The constant loop of getting battered, complaining about the beating, and then going straight back in for another beating. For about, I don't know, about 100 hours, which, I mean, looking back on it, probably says more about me than it does about the game. So, going into this, I had never played a Stalker game before. This was my first time with the series, so I didn't have that built-in understanding of how it's meant to feel. I didn't have any nostalgia, I didn't have any reference point, I just jumped straight into it thinking, right, big open world shooter, like a Russian Far Cry. How brutal can it be? Quite brutal, in fact. At times, anyway. It feels that way early on. Because the first chunk of the game is solely dedicated to bitch slapping you. You take a fight that you think you can handle. You can't. You go somewhere that you think looks sort of cool and interesting, but there's nothing around. There are things around. You assume you have a handle on things. You don't. And the whole time you're thinking the same thing over and over again. This is shite. What was I supposed to do there? That was the game fucking me over. It's just janky. Which sounds like I hated it. But I didn't. That's the weird part. Because even while I was saying all of that, I was playing it. And I think a lot of that comes from how the game presents itself. It doesn't really guide you in a clean way. It just throws you into situations and lets you deal with them, whether you're ready to or not. So you spend those early hours just fucking reacting to bullshit badly most of the time. You're underprepared for pretty much everything. You're low on ammo, you're not entirely sure what items you should be prioritizing with your limited backpack space, you're taking fights that you definitely shouldn't be fucking taking because you don't have the experience to know better yet. It creates this fucking loop where you're just struggling, complaining about the struggle, and then going back into struggle again. Not because the game has like made itself clearer to you for the next run, but because you're not willing to leave it there, god damn it. You're not going to let it beat you. Very much like a From Software game, although like not at all. Anyway, it's like you slowly start to settle in to the misery. Not even in a right, okay, I get it now, but more like you just stop expecting the game to help you. You stop waiting for the game to explain itself properly or like to smooth things out for you. You just accept that this is how it's going to be. Rough as fuck, a bit unclear, slightly unfair at times, but instead of pushing back against it, you start to work around it. You approach things more carefully, you start to fucking like second guess yourself, second guess decisions you wouldn't normally second guess in these types of games. Because the game burns you enough times to know better. You get into a state of not really trusting anything. That's where it starts to come together. Not in a satisfying, oh, the game opens up for you kind of way, just in a way that now you're now operating on the same wavelength as the game. You're still getting caught out, still getting bent over and shafted, still making mistakes, still having those moments where you just sit there thinking, that was bullshit, it was bullshit, that should not have happened. But also starting to handle situations you definitely wouldn't to handle earlier. And again, it doesn't reward that in a big obvious way either. There's no moment where it goes, well done, now you've figured it out. You survive. You survive something you wouldn't have survived before and you feel good about it. And then you move on, usually straight into something that kills you. Once you get through that early phase of getting backhand bitch slapped and then questioning your life choices, the actual structure of the game is pretty much what you would expect. It's a big open world. Lots of objectives, lots of side missions, lots of places to go and things to see, lots of things to juggle, health, stamina, hunger, radiation sickness, psychic damage, basically brain damage, all that good shit. Like I said, just loads of places to see and go, and there's nothing really stopping you from just heading off and doing whatever the fuck you want straight away. Which sounds great. And it is great, right up until you realise that just because you can go somewhere doesn't mean you should. The game doesn't really gate you off in a traditional way. I mean, it does for certain areas which we will get to later in the video. It doesn't go, but for the most part it doesn't say like, oh, just come back here when you're ready, when you've leveled up a little bit. It never really gives you that affirmation. It just lets you wander into situations that you're very clearly not equipped to deal with yet. And then it watches how badly that plays out. And it does play out badly. So you end up with this loop where you're constantly moving between objectives, but not in a clean, linear way. You'll head out to do something, like a side mission or something, but then you'll get distracted by something else, so you'll wander off course, and then you will wander into a situation that you didn't plan for, and suddenly you're just trying to survive. You've wasted all your ammo, you've wasted all your health, and now you just want to get out of it and survive. That becomes the gameplay. It's less about ticking things off a list, and more about dealing with whatever's in front of you at that moment.
Hey, trying to ruin my hunt, are you?
What are you hunting here?
Here in the zone, you never know for sure. I haven't seen anything but the Sultan's boys, and they're scattered all over the swamps. Keep your eyes open. That creature's nearby. I can feel it. My gut never lies. Quiet! Did you hear that?
What?
The creature's here! Come on, grab your biggest gun. This is gonna be one hell of a hunt.
Side missions are scattered fucking everywhere. But little bits of stories. Great side missions. Really good little bits of story tucked into different areas. little encounters that feel like they've got their own thing going on completely. It's one of those worlds where you can just head out into the zone with no real plan and still end up doing something important. Even if that something is just barely making it out of a situation that you probably shouldn't have fucking been in the first place. The main plot just kinda sits in the background, like you're a guy who has had to go into the zone to find an artifact that's special, and then that's it, basically. The main plot just sort of sits behind everything for a while, because of everything that I just said. It's there, don't get me wrong, the main plot is progressing, but it's very easy to ignore it for long stretches while you're just off dealing with everything else that the zone is throwing at you. Which, to be fair, absolutely fits the game, because it never really feels like you're the centre of anything. You're not moving from big set piece to big set piece. I mean, there are big set pieces, but you're not just moving from one to the other. You're just there. And they're happening around you, sort of thing, if that makes sense. You're moving from place to place, picking things up, getting into fights, getting out of fights, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, most of the time not. But because there's so little holding you back, the pacing ends up being just fucking all over the place in a way that actually really, really works to the game's credit. You can go from feeling like you've got things completely... You can go from feeling like you've got things completely under control, and then suddenly you're out of your depth in the space of a few minutes. Just based on like where you've decided to go on the map. The game does not smooth that out at any point, except maybe towards the end, but again, we will get to that. It never really tries to balance your experience so that it always feels fair, or that it always feels manageable. It just lets that shit happen, which means a lot of what you end up doing is reacting. Reacting to bad situations, reacting to things that you didn't see coming, reacting to decisions that you made 5 minutes ago that are now catching up with you. Sometimes you have a plan. Most of the time you should have a plan, but as I say, the plan gets away from you 9 times out of 10. So most of the time when you're in these situations, you don't have a plan. That's kind of the point. All of this really works because of the setting. I love the world of Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. It's one of those rare open worlds where the tone isn't just something sitting on top of the game, it's baked into everything. Every system, every area, every decision that you make feels shaped by the zone. Because this place is fucking horrible. Not in a loud, dramatic, oh look how edgy we are kind of way. It's just a consistently unpleasant place to be. Everything in the zone feels hostile. And I don't just mean the enemies and the mutants, the actual world itself, the environment, the very nature itself is trying to kill you. The map feels like it's actively working against you. It doesn't want you to be able to walk to that place. Just the way the areas are laid out, the way the visibility drops off, the way that you move through the spaces, it constantly feels like you're being nudged into situations that you know and the game knows aren't going to go well. So you're not exploring a world. You're just surviving in it, badly most of the time. And it feeds heavily into like the fear of isolation as well. You spend a lot of time in these big, empty, liminal spaces where nothing is really happening, but it doesn't feel calm. It could almost be like the back rooms. You've slipped into the back rooms. It feels like something should be happening, but isn't. Buildings look like they should still have people in them, but they don't. Long stretches of land where you can see for miles, but somehow it makes you feel more exposed, not less. There's always that underlying tension that something is about to go wrong. And when it does, it usually does very quickly, which makes the quieter moments even fucking worse because you're never really relaxed. You're just waiting for the next bit of bullshit. And it's probably going to be the grimmest, it's going to be the grimmest bullshit you've ever seen. I mean, speaking of grim, this is the grimmest open world. It's probably the most oppressive open world that I've ever played, and I include the lands between Elden Ring and all that, and Bloodborne isn't fucking an open world. I also just made myself look like an idiot there. But you know what I mean? I include Elden Ring in that. Like the world of Stalker 2, the zone is truly oppressive. The easiest way to describe it, it feels like Fallout 4 meets Escape from Tarkov. I'm sure I'm not the first person to like draw that comparison, but that is like truly what it's like. You've got that ruined, decaying world just scavenging through what's left of it, but mixed with that constant tension where every decision feels like it could cost you something, and every room feels like it could have something massively important in it, but it usually doesn't. The difference with this from something like Fallout is there is no comfort layer on top of it. There is humour, don't get me wrong, there is humour, but it doesn't ever break the tension. It's sort of really oddball humour. But there's no sense that the game wants you to feel at ease for any length of time, and so the humour that is there, it sort of makes it more uncomfortable. There's never humour to ease the tension. Even when it looks good, and it does look good, it's a fucking great looking game, but it's never trying to be inviting. It's kind of a dead, bleak beauty. Everything looks great, but you don't want to be there. I think that's why it works so well, because it doesn't feel like a playground. It doesn't feel like it's been designed for your enjoyment, in the usual way that these big open world games are. The zone feels like a place that exists whether you are there or not, and it would probably be better off if you weren't there. There's no sense of ownership over it either, like you get with other big open worlds that you feel like you conquer them. You don't clear areas and then suddenly feel safe. You don't move through locations and feel like you've conquered them, as I say. You just grease through the map, if that makes sense. The world closes in on you and behind you, which means the entire time you're playing, there's this underlying feeling that you just don't belong there. You're not meant to get comfortable. You're not meant to feel powerful. You're not meant to feel in control. You're just another stalker trying to make it through a place that's already decided it doesn't want you here. And somehow that makes you want to stay even more. It's fucking great. It's dynamite.
Finish him, and let's make tracks.
The narrative is a bit of a slow burn, especially if you're coming into this like I was, with no real background of the series. Because early on, it doesn't really, the narrative doesn't grab you in a huge way. It's there, don't get me wrong, and it's interesting. You've got objectives, characters, things happening, but it doesn't feel urgent. It doesn't feel like something you're constantly being pulled towards. And part of that is it's just how the game is structured, really. You're so busy dealing with everything else like wandering off, getting distracted, trying to survive whatever situation you've fucking rabbit holed yourself into, and the main plot kind of just drifts into the background for a while. It's not that it's bad, it's just it's not the main focus early on in the game, which can make it feel a bit slow to get going, especially if you're new and you don't already have that connection to the world and the Stalker series, or and like you don't know anything about the factions and what's actually at stake, like I didn't. You're kind of just piecing it together as you go, and it takes a while before it starts to feel like it matters. At least it did for me. When it does though, it's a very, very noticeable shift, because later on you start to feel like the weight of what you're doing really matters. It comes into play. Decisions really do start to matter. Not in a flashy, this will change everything immediately kind of way, although those decisions are there, but there's quieter things, a quieter sense that what you're doing has consequences that stick with you. And that works really, really well with the rest of the game, because by that point you've already spent a long time in the zone. You've been fucking dragged through it, you've made mistakes, you've survived things, so when the story really starts asking you to make choices, it actually feels like those choices do belong to you. You're not just following a plot, you are actually a part of it. And if you don't fully understand all of it, that's fine. You will eventually. I didn't. There was big parts of it that I was just sort of going, what? But trust me, stick with it. It doesn't constantly stop to make sure you're keeping up or fully understanding, or if the people in the back can hear. It's not one of those games. It doesn't over-explain its story. It doesn't constantly, as I say, it just trusts you to pick up what you can and to keep moving forward, which fits the tone, but it does mean that there are points where you're not entirely sure what's happening, as I said. You know it always matters though, even if you don't understand what's happening, you have a sense that what's happening is important, and so you go with it. So yeah, early on, the narrative is slow. It takes its time, it's a big open world, and it takes maybe a bit too much time, if I'm being honest, but there are some big set pieces at the start to sort of get your teeth into, but later on when it starts coming together, it is a lot more engaging. Not because it's only become something different, but because you've now spent enough time in the world to actually understand what it means, and it means something very important.
He's dead, they say. Destroyed. Lies, I tell you. They're all filthy, pathetic lies.
I played this on PS5 at launch. A base PS5, I know. Visually, it looks very good. Like genuinely impressive in places. The environments especially, which is funny because most of what you're looking at is absolutely fucking miserable. Collapsed buildings, dead spaces, rust, decay, just everything. Everything's looking like it's had a bad time for a very long time. Somehow it still manages to look great in spite of that, if that makes sense. It's that thing where the game is showing you something objectively miserable, but it's doing it in a way that's actually quite striking and beautiful to look at. There's a lot of detail in the environments, a lot of care in how places are put together, and it really sells the idea that this is a real place, the zone is real, and that it's been left to rot. So yeah, it is a very, very, very pretty game. It is, most definitely. Just not in the way that makes you want to live there, if you know what I mean, or be there. More in a, yeah, that looks fucking amazing, I'm glad I don't actually have to live there, sort of thing. That said, visually, I mean, it isn't perfect. There's definitely still some pop-in issues. The game was, infamously released in a really bad state on PC and Xbox. Like, sort of very, very janky. And the jank we will get to is still there, but visually there are still pop-ins. You'll be moving through an area and things will just sort of like appear whenever they feel like it, which can get a bit distracting. It can break the immersion sometimes. It's the same with the general graphical hiccups. There's nothing completely game breaking anymore, as far as I'm aware, but there is sort of enough there that you notice it. It's one of those games where it looks great, but every now and again it reminds you that it's still fucking a bit rough round the edges, which at this point kind of fits the aesthetic of the game. Then you've got the monsters, the mutants, the enemies. The variety here is actually pretty good. I was very happy with it. You're not just dealing with the same thing over and over again. You have mutants, you have mutated animals, you have psychic monsters that can fucking grab your weapon out of your hand, and you have to deal with them completely differently. Every enemy, you have to approach it differently. It keeps you on your toes in a way that fits the rest of the experience. Because again, you're never really fully settled. You don't know which kind of enemy you're going to deal with and what kind of weapons and meds you're going to need to deal with them. You're never really fully confident that you know how the next encounter is going to go. And that unpredictability carries through here as well. Even when you think you're prepared, you're fucking usually not. Which is pretty consistent with everything else the game does, to be fair. Now, the jank. Because there is still a lot of it. There's still a lot of it. The AI is very janky. Like, properly inconsistent and hilarious. We'll get to it. You'll have moments where it feels really sharp and responsive and good, like reactive, aggressive. The enemies flank you, and they're actually doing what you would expect them to do. And then the next encounter, it's like they're all brain dead. They've forgotten how to function. Enemies will stand out in the open. They'll not react properly. They'll all bump into each other and congregate in a big mass of people. Just talking and doing absolute fucking nonsense, and you're just sitting there looking at it going, alright, okay, I'll take it. But it is very immersion breaking. It kind of sums up a lot of the game, to be honest. It works really, really well until it doesn't. There's glitches, there's weird interactions, things behaving in ways that they shouldn't behave, little bits of jank all over the place that remind you this isn't the most polished experience in the world. And yeah, sometimes it's just fucking annoying. There's no dressing that up. You'll die to something that feels like it absolutely should not have happened, or you'll see something happen that pulls you out for even just a second, and you just have to deal with it. But then, there is the other side of it, because a lot of that jank is fucking hilarious. It's really funny. You'll get these completely unpredictable moments where something goes wrong in the right way. And instead of being frustrating or anything, it's just fucking so funny. It can be so funny. Not just because of the world, but because of the systems themselves. Everything feels a bit unstable. Do you know what I mean? And a bit held together with duct tape still. Which absolutely fits, don't get me wrong. I'm not, because this studio did a fucking fantastic job. But the world, everything feels wrong. And just like it's about to tip over the edge. It already feels like a place where things aren't behaving in the way they should. So when something does like glitch, or the AI does something strange, or it doesn't really feel particularly out of place when these things happen in the zone. Sometimes it feels like it's part of the experience of the zone. Not always though, don't get me wrong, there are definitely moments where it's just clearly fucking broken. But enough of the time that you start to accept it. You stop expecting it to be perfectly smooth. You stop expecting every encounter to play out cleanly, and instead you just deal with whatever happens. Which is basically what the game has been training you to do the whole time anyway. And it's worth saying as well, the fact this game exists in the state it does is kind of a minor miracle. It was developed in Ukraine while the country was literally at war, right? Which it doesn't excuse the issues, obviously. You can't just ignore the problems of the game because of that, but it does add a good context, because when you look at the scale of what's been achieved here, the size of the zone, the systems all at play, the fact that it works as well as it does, as often as it does when it's kind of remarkable, to be fair. It is a rough game. Don't get me wrong, no question. but it's also a game that's doing a lot under circumstances that most studios will never have to deal with. And I think that comes through. It really does. Not in a way where you're constantly thinking about it while you're playing the game. You're not always thinking about the war in Ukraine the way through, but in a sense that you can see the ambition there, even when the execution has been sort of compromised to some extent. Again, this all adds to it. The criticism is like not real fucking criticism, to be fair. All the jank sort of works in its favour, as I said. This isn't a clean, polished, perfectly balanced experience. It's messy, it's unpredictable, it's a bit broken in places. Just like the Zone. It ends up feeling more in line with what the game is trying to be than if everything worked perfectly. The biggest issue I had with the game comes pretty late on in the narrative, in the story. Pripyat. Because I was looking forward to going to that area for pretty much the entire stage, the entire sort of second half of the game. You know what I mean? Like genuinely 30, 40 hours of thinking, right, yes, when I get to Pripyat, man, that's going to be the moment, that's going to be the shit. That's, like, Pripyat is the place you associate with all of this. Let's be real. That's the location that carries all of the weight, all of the history, all of the atmosphere that the game's been building towards. I'm going to get to walk around Pripyat and I will recognise things. You've got that in the back of your mind the whole time you're playing, pushing through everything else thinking, but when I get to Pripyat, man, and then you get there. And it looks great. Don't get me wrong, it's really, really ominous. Straight away you can tell a lot of effort went into this. There's detail, there's care, and it feels like a proper approximation of a real place. It doesn't feel thrown together or rushed. You can see the research in it, the attention to how it should look, how it should feel. And that just makes the problem I have with it worse. You don't really get to experience it properly, in my opinion. You're not there exploring it, you're just moving through it. That's the difference. After all that build-up, all that anticipation, it ends up feeling like a place you sort of pass through, to be honest, rather than somewhere that you want to spend a lot of time in. Which is frustrating, because it's easily one of the most interesting locations in the entire game. It is the most interesting location in the entire game, and it feels like it should be a major, major part of the experience. Again, I've not played older ones, we'll get to that. In this game, it's kind of late. Too late. By the time you get there, you're already sort of near the end of the story. You're really invested and you want to see what's going to happen with the story, so there's not really much left to do, not much reason to really slow down and take it in the way you want to. You're still dealing with objectives, still moving forward, still being pushed along. You just don't get that moment of just sort of being there. That's the missed opportunity as far as I'm concerned. Now, it's not that it's badly done, because it isn't. It's very, very well done. That's the problem. It's just not used as well as it could have been. All the build-up, all the anticipation, as I said, and then you finally reach it, and you don't get the time with it that it feels like it deserves. This was my first Stalker game. I had no attachment to the series going in, no nostalgia for the older titles, no real idea of what it was supposed to feel like beyond what I'd seen here and there. So all of this, everything I've talked about, that was just the experience as it came to me, if you know what I mean. And yes, I have come out of it a fucking massive fan. Which I didn't expect, to be honest, because if you look at it on paper, there's a lot there that should have really put me off. It's rough, it's inconsistent, it's frustrating more often than most games get away with, for me. Do you know, that I would allow to get away with. There are long stretches where it feels like it's actively working against you instead of with you. And yet, I stuck with it. And I didn't just stick with it, I got into it. To the point where now I'm interested in what comes next. Whatever they do with this series, man, I'm there for it. I'm probably going to go back and check out some of the older games as well. Just to see how all of this started, and how much of it has always been there. How much more I have to explore the zone. There's something here. There's something about this formula really just fucking works. It just works. It's even when it doesn't. That's the point. Even when it doesn't, a lot of the time, if that makes sense. It's not clean. It's not polished. It's not designed to make a good first impression, but it leaves one anyway. Just not in the way you would expect. I think that's why it sticks. So yeah, I love this game, which still feels like a weird thing to say because I spent like a lot of the runtime fucking hating it because it's not one of those games that makes itself easy to love. It's rough, it's frustrating, there are points where it feels like it's not working the way that it should, the AI goes fucked up, things glitch out, you get thrown into situations that you shouldn't be in, and somehow none of that was enough to put me off of it. If anything, it did the opposite, because underneath it all, there's something here that really works. As I said, the setting, man, the tone, the feeling of being in a world that doesn't want you to be there. It all comes together in a way that's it's hard to describe properly unless you've actually spent time in it. It's grim, it's oppressive, it's genuinely unpleasant to exist in for long stretches of time. And it's also kind of beautiful. Not in a comforting way, not a comforting beauty, not in a way that makes you want to stay there, just in how consistent it is. Everything about it feels like it belongs together. The jank, the hostility, the unpredictability of it all feeds into the same experience. And yeah, there are things I would change, don't get me wrong. Pripyat should have had more time to breathe. Some of the systems could have been more consistent. There are moments where it crosses the line from challenging to just fucking annoying. There really are. But none of that really changed how I felt about it overall. Because this isn't a game that wins you over by being polished. It wins you over by being itself. Rough edges and all. Whether that works for you is probably going to come down to how much of that you're willing to put up with. For me, quite a lot, apparently.